Like what you see here? Then be sure to subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8, a channel devoted to the history of college football. New videos drop twice a week. Click the card in the upper right corner or the link in the description to subscribe now. And now, on with our feature presentation.
When a player gets called up to the big leagues, it's one of the highlights not just of their career, but of their entire life. This is what you've been waiting for. This is what you've longed for. Years of hard work and sacrifice, and now you're a member of one of the most exclusive fraternities in professional sports. Many people around the world play this great sport, but very few get to say that they played in Major League Baseball and got to play the sport at the highest level possible. It's a commemoration of everything it took to get to this point, and it sets you up with a bunch of benefits. I think it's safe to say that when someone gets called up to MLB, they're through the roof. They're overjoyed. They're crying tears of happiness. They're elated. They're happy. Use whatever word you want to describe it. Nobody's getting the call up to the major leagues and is upset and having second thoughts and is kind of hoping that the news isn't true. Without any additional context, to think that way seems crazy. How could you possibly be upset about getting the call? Well, that was sort of the case for the man that you've been watching this whole time, pitcher Luke Prokopec. On September 4th, 2000, the Australian pitcher made his major league debut against the Pittsburgh Pirates and was asked to join the Dodgers in their starting rotation. And while just about every single person would be overjoyed about this, for Prokopec, while I don't want to say he was angry about the call-up by any means, he was definitely feeling a little conflicted, and was sort of upset and disappointed that he was now going to be a major league pitcher. Why was that the case? What's the story of this bizarre saga? Well, that's what we're going to take a deep dive into today. Because this is the story behind one of the most bizarre call-ups in the history of the Los Angeles Dodgers and in the history of Major League Baseball. Before I talk about the actual call-up in question, we need some context to understand what was going on in the world around this time, as well as just who Luke Prokopec was. Oddly enough, Prokopec did not begin his career as a pitcher, as he played a bunch of different positions when he first started out in the minors. He played a bit at catcher for the Great Falls Dodgers of the Pioneer League in 1995, and then played in the outfield in the Dodgers system from 1995 to 97. However, by the time 1998 rolled around, Prokopec was firmly entrenched as a pitcher and had found a home at just 20 years old in Double-A, playing for the San Antonio Missions. It was actually kind of remarkable how quickly he became great as a pitcher. At one point midway through 1998, he was leading all minor leaguers by averaging 13.8 strikeouts per 9 innings of work. It was especially remarkable considering the fact that it came by complete accident. The only reason he transitioned to a pitcher in the first place was because during a 1997 game in Class A, he was brought into a blowout game just so that his team, Savannah, wouldn't have to burn a reliever, and he was so impressive that he started finding a home on the mound. He even threw 93 miles per hour in that debut. Said Prokopec on his bizarre minor league career, "I was an up-and-down position player. Then when it came to pitching, I had a lot of success. It was strange but enjoyable." And then came the 2000 season. By this point, Prokopec's ascension had become noticeable to anyone who was closely following the farm system. Prokopec was so good that he made the Texas League All-Star game, serving as the league's starting pitcher in their battle against the All-Stars from the Mexican League. At one point in the middle of August, Prokopec was second in the Texas League in ERA, and had an incredible ERA of 2.45, along with 124 strikeouts in 128 innings of work. And with his incredible play in Double-A, and with the rosters expanding for the final month of the season from 25 players to 40 players, Prokopec was a prime candidate to be called up, and to join the Dodgers rotation, whether it be as a low starter in the rotation, or as a long reliever. The Dodgers were not in a great spot, as they were 7 games back of a playoff spot and the division lead with a 70-64 record. But crazier things had happened, and at least there was an outside shot that if things went their way, that the Dodgers could make a late playoff push. And at just 22 years old, and after just 3 years as a pitcher, Luke Prokopec was officially called up to the Los Angeles Dodgers. Just like that, he was now a Major League Baseball player. What a story. What an incredible moment. There was just one small problem. Because back in 2000, right around this time, there was another baseball event that was taking place. And that event? Well, you may have heard of it.
This September, the world's most enchanting lands and one of the world's most beautiful cities will play host to the world's greatest athletes. The 2000 Olympic Games in Sydney on the networks of NBC.
That's right. None other than the 2000 Summer Olympics in Sydney, Australia, taking place a bit later than its usual time around July and August. For many players, obviously, there's a ton to look forward to by representing your country in the Olympics. However, for Luke Prokopec, that was especially true for a variety of reasons. Number one, not only was Prokopec on the roster, but he was listed as the team's #1 pitcher. When Australia played its first game against the Netherlands, Prokopec was going to be on the hill as the starter. He was the team's bona fide ace. The other pitchers that Australia had weren't very good. During the Olympics, Australia allowed 41 runs, giving up just under 6 runs per game. And just about all of Australia's pitchers were either hovering in the minor leagues or were pitching somewhere in Australia. In other words, not only was Prokopec going to be representing Australia, but he was the ace. He was the face of the team. He was the figure that players and fans would gravitate toward. But number two, and perhaps most importantly, the Olympics were taking place in Australia, as in the country that Prokopec was from. To represent your country in the Olympics is one thing, but to represent your country when they're hosting the Olympics, and when you're the home team, and you get the chance to experience that glory, that's a completely different ballgame. When you think of some of the most iconic moments in Olympic history, from the USA's upset of the Soviet Union at the 1980 Winter Olympics in hockey, to Canada winning the gold medal match in overtime against the USA in hockey at the 2010 Winter Olympics, a lot of them center around athletes winning in front of the home crowd. The Olympics gave Prokopec a chance to go home and be a hero on, quite literally, the biggest sporting stage in the world. However, there was a problem with the Olympics when it came to Major League Baseball, and that was the fact that MLB did not allow its athletes to go and compete in the games. The season was not put on pause, and no major leaguers would be allowed to leave their teams to play for their country. It's always been this way. If you let players play in the Olympics, it depletes rosters and would provide certain teams with a significant competitive disadvantage. Plus, there's a risk for injury in an event that isn't run or sanctioned by MLB. And if you do decide to halt the season and send everything to a stop, it would extend the postseason into mid-November, which would be impractical for a ton of teams. Trying to imagine the 2000 Subway Series between the Yankees and the Mets if the season came to a 3-week stop because of the Olympics is just brutal. And for what it's worth, when I spoke to Commissioner Bud Selig about this, he had no regrets with his decision to not let MLB players play in the Olympics. While professional players were allowed to participate for the first time, if you were a player in Major League Baseball, you could not. And therein lies the dilemma. On one hand, Prokopec got the call that he'd been dreaming about for his entire life, and got the word that he was going to be a Major League Baseball player. On the other hand, he was looking forward to the Olympics and to representing his country in an Olympic Games being held in his home country. Plus, it would be one thing if Prokopec got the call-up in May or June, a few months before the Olympics, so he never would have had time to entertain the thought of playing. But he got the call at the end of August, literally as he was about to leave for the airport to head to Australia to compete. He was quite literally packed up and on his way when the Dodgers called and told him not to go anywhere, because he was going to be playing for their major league organization. Double plus, Prokopec was only 22. You had to think that with how well he was pitching in Double-A, there would have been other chances to get called up. An impressive spring training stint, and he's on the major league roster in 2001, no questions asked. With the Olympics, this was a one-shot deal. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The International Olympic Committee takes their sweet time in between the same country hosting twice. As long as Prokopec was pitching, no matter how long his career was, this was the one and only time he'd get the chance to play for Australia in an Australian Olympics. And triple plus, what was stopping the Dodgers if they called up Prokopec from just not playing him, or from demoting him back down to the minors straight after, shutting him out of his major league dream and his Olympic dream simultaneously? When you weigh all those factors and elements in, yeah, it makes complete sense why Prokopec was conflicted about this news coming from Los Angeles to come and join their major league team. So that raises the question, what did Prokopec decide to do? Well, he chose the Dodgers. He couldn't turn this down. However, that's not to say that it was an easy decision, and that's not to say that he was sick and conflicted about that decision. As Prokopec said after getting the call-up, while expressing gratitude toward the Dodgers and saying that it was a dream to play in the majors, half of my stomach is twisted up because I'm not going to be in the Olympics, and I feel like I'm letting Australia down. He then said following Australia's opening game loss to the Netherlands by a final score of 6-4, I wanted to pitch this game for the boys back in Sydney at the Olympics. I'm kinda disappointed I'm not there with them. The good news at least was that no one in Australia was mad at Prokopec for doing this and for making this decision, so he didn't necessarily have to live with the guilt of letting his country down. As Prokopec said later, I was a bit disappointed I couldn't play in the Olympics, but the guys I talked to on the Australian team said they would have done the same thing. One of the Australian coaches from the 2000 Olympics said as much, saying on his decision, "There's no question about it. Obviously, we would have been a better club with him on our staff, but he had a chance to go to the big leagues, and that's just a tremendous opportunity for him." However, all these years later, Prokopec still weighed the decision, and you can sense that even though he loved his time in the majors and loved hearing the call-up announcement, that he was still somewhat wondering, what if? Take a listen to this interview.
And when you get the call-up, I mean, the other guys we've interviewed remember it vividly, and you still recall that?
Yeah, I sure do. It was a very, very surreal moment. On one hand, I had my tickets to go to pre-Olympic camp on the Gold Coast, and we literally had our entire apartment packed up, ready to go. We were going, literally like an hour later, we were heading to the airport hotel, so we catch the early morning flight out to Gold Coast, and got a phone call from our pitching coordinator. He said, "Whatever you do, do not get on the airplane. You're going to the big league." So I've got a photograph still. My wife was in the room at the time. She got a photograph of it, and it's a very, very special occasion. It's even just now sitting here talking about it, you get goosebumps up the back of your neck and on your arms, and it's a very special occasion. It took me 6 years and 3 positions to get there, and very happy, but almost devastated too on the other hand too, because I was missing out my chance to go to the Olympics with the boys, and everyone knows the Sydney story and what happened there for us as a nation, and you feel a little bit guilty for that.
For what it's worth, Prokopec's career in the majors as a pitcher was rather unremarkable once he got there. He had his moments for sure, like a nationally televised game on ESPN against the Milwaukee Brewers where he had a career-high 11 strikeouts. However, he struggled pretty heavily, and didn't pitch in the majors after the 2002 season, following an 11-17 record with a 5.3 ERA, and with nearly 2 home runs allowed per 9 innings, as the once dominant pitcher in the minors at striking guys out couldn't consistently do that in the majors, averaging around 5.5 strikeouts per 9 innings. After 2 seasons with the Dodgers and 1 season in 2002 with the Toronto Blue Jays, that was it for Prokopec, after he needed multiple surgeries to repair a torn labrum in his right shoulder. At just 24 years old, his baseball career was done. However, despite his rather unremarkable major league career, it doesn't take away from his remarkable call-up to get there in the first place. Every player's got a story of how they got to the big leagues, and perhaps none are as unique and as crazy as Luke Prokopec. Because in 2000, Prokopec truly had to choose between club and country. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.